Or is it possible we can find out-of-place artifacts in other places, maybe like the moon? Well, something very interesting has happened. In the year 2016, NASA has released its entire archive of lunar images, images taken of the lunar surface from the Apollo missions all the way from 1961 when they began through 1972. There are things on these images that NASA cannot explain, so they are called anomalous images. Some of them are so anomalous that they have been pixelated out so that we can't really see what they are, but we can still see the pixels. So there's something happening on the moon, and I want you to see some of these images, just a couple of them. I was an amateur archaeologist when I was in college. And one of the things, the very first things that I learned as an archaeologist is this. When we see 90-degree angles on an archaeological site, that tells us that it is in fact an archaeological site, that it is not a natural formation. Nature does not erode with wind in 90-degree angles, or nature does not erode through a stream or a river in 90-degree angles. So when you see a 90-degree angle like you're seeing on your screen right now, this is an excavated archaeological site that we're seeing an aerial view, and it's very clear to see the red lines are showing us where that 90-degree angle is. The next image that you're seeing, this is from the surface of the moon, and this is among the images that NASA released. You're seeing on the lower right-hand portion of the screen, you can see what looks like a little cube, and then in the upper right-hand portion, you're seeing what definitely is an enlargement of that cube. Those are definitely 90-degree angles. They are definitely made intentionally. They are not the result of erosion. The question is, what are they doing on the moon? We have been led to believe that the moon is a sterile surface, that there is no life existing on the moon, nor has there ever been. So when we begin to see things like this, and again, these images from 1961 through 1972, what do they mean? Well, if it was only one image, you'd say maybe it's just a trick of light, or a trick of light and shadow. But it's not just one image. I want you to see some of the other images that NASA is releasing. The Clementine mission to the moon came later, after the Apollo missions. So Clementine was a separate mission that went back to the moon, maybe to look a little closer at some of the anomalies that Apollo was seeing. And it's the Clementine images that we're finding pixelated, although they are released to the public. So you're seeing one now. There's obviously something here in the image that you're seeing that for whatever reason, we're not being allowed to see. What could that be on the surface of the moon? What is the out-of-place artifact that we're not seeing? Here's another one that looks more like some kind of a tower, perhaps, of some kind, or an obelisk that's been pixeled out. These are from the Clementine mission. Now, when people see things like this on the moon, the first thing that comes to mind is aliens, ETs, UFOs, things like that. And I fully believe, I'm certain, that we are not alone in this universe. It would make no sense for us to be. And that there's an overwhelming body of evidence suggesting now that other life forms have been with us for a very long time, both in our world and in other worlds. The astronauts have talked about this, those that have been interviewed. But I'm going to give you just a little bit different perspective. We are living a time of extremes. We are living a time when the cycles of conflict are ramping up. You don't need me to tell you that. You can feel the tension in the world, the push toward war. Doesn't mean that war needs to happen, but there are multiple places and hotspots where you can see right now, it wouldn't take much to create that. Okay, at the same time, something else is happening. During the Cold War years, there were only two nations that had the money and the technology to go to the moon. It's the former USSR, former Soviet Union, and the former United States of America. And I have to say that because both nations are so broke right now that we're not going back to the moon, at least in the way that we have in the past. But there are other nations that are going to the moon. During the Cold War, even though the former Soviet Union and former United States of America were at war on one level, it was a very civilized war in some respects because there were agreements among scientists on other levels. One of those agreements was that things that were found on the moon, for whatever reason, were not publicly shared among the people of the earth at the time. And I'm not going to say it's right, wrong, good, or bad. There were research programs that said that certain kinds of information could disrupt the fabric of society and overturn religious beliefs. And again, it was another world. This was the 60s and the 70s. But the point is, those agreements were honored, and I think that's one of the reasons we're not seeing some of these images. The nations that are now on their way to the moon, the nations that have the money and the technology and the will to return, were not part of those agreements. China, for example, India, are both on their way to the moon. And both nations have said that when they land on the moon, they will televise to the people of the earth whatever it is that they find live as they find it. Here's why I believe this is important. And this is a place where I'm moving beyond peer-reviewed science. I'm sharing with you my perspective, my sense, my belief. When we find those out-of-place artifacts on the moon, when we find archaeological remnants of intentional civilization in a place where we used to be hoping to find microbes. We were looking for life, hoping to find microscopic life, and now we're finding entire temple complexes, is what appears to be on those images. When we find those, my sense is that we're going to discover something that could be the most powerful, the most unifying experience the people, our global family, the people of Earth could ever have. Because my sense is that when we go into those ancient sites, we're going to find the hieroglyphs on the walls. We're going to find writing in languages that we already know. In the original languages called root languages of the earth: Hebrew, Sanskrit, cuneiform, Arabic. And the reason we're finding them there is because those sites are not necessarily alien ET UFO sites. I believe they are sites that were developed by us from another cycle of another civilization. When we worked together as a family on this planet, when we cooperated and achieved great and beautiful things. And my question is, if we were able to do things like that in the past, how much further could we go if we did the same thing right now with what we know today? Here's the beauty. Here we are on the verge of war, at a time when the cycles are converging, creating the tension in the time of extremes, and at exactly that time, we may find the evidence of us from another time that has the power to unify us rather than divide us. And I think we're going to see that very soon in our lifetimes. So what would that mean? What would it mean if we found something like that? And when we look at the advanced civilizations on Earth, why did those civilizations collapse? What happened in the past? Is there something that could have happened then that we've forgotten? Or maybe we chose to forget because whatever it was so painful, we didn't want to carry it into future civilizations. Well, I want to share with you another out-of-place artifact, an ancient clue that is happening in what is now Pakistan. It is in an area used to be between India and Pakistan, ancient sites, archaeological sites, such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. And we've known about these sites for a while. They're about 5,000 years before present, is when we say they originated. Interestingly, it's the beginning of the last cycle. It also happens to be at the time of the last great climate change. What we're finding is evidence of an advanced society. An advanced society that had things in their time that we have in ours today. They had knowledge of mathematics, chemistry, architecture, advanced architecture, multi-story buildings. They had closed indoor plumbing, hot and cold running water, flush toilets, stained glass in their windows. They even had buried pipelines where there have been wires and remnants of cables, and what are believed to be ancient batteries have been found in these sites. So clearly, these were not primitive grass huts. These were advanced technological civilizations, and they had more. They had amazing art, beautiful art, using techniques of sculpture that we're only beginning to use now in the 20th century. But there are a lot of mysteries in these sites. Scientists, archaeologists also began to find evidence of what is called vitrified stone. What that means is that in the walls of the homes, for example, or in the floors made of quartz, or granite that is made of quartz and feldspar and mica. Some of the minerals, while they're still in place, they've been exposed to a heat that was so intense it melted the minerals in place. A high, intense, rapid heat that melted these minerals in place. And one of the mysteries, the archaeologists began to find these mysterious lumps of something. And it took them a while to understand that what they were looking at, these were lumps of clay that used to be clay vases and clay dolls that had also been vitrified. They were exposed to a rapid, intense heat. They were melted so quickly. All that's left now is a stone ball. So these kinds of things are the mysteries to the scientists. They're saying, what happened? What could have happened in this part of the world? Well, this is one of those places where you have to look beyond the evidence. If you look only at the evidence, you'll never understand what it is that happened. We need context. And some of that context is coming from the oral traditions of this part of the world, from the Hindu traditions of the Mahabharata, and specifically in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a small portion of the Mahabharata. This portion of the Mahabharata tells a story of an ancient battle that happened between two advanced civilizations a long time ago. It doesn't give the exact dates. And as these two civilizations clashed, one of them began to lose the battle, and they resorted to using a weapon that had never been used before, a technology that had never been used before. And they wrote about what the effects of this weapon were in a way that made no sense until the 20th century, because we had nothing to compare it to. What could have been seen in the eyes of the people living in Mohenjo-Daro 5,000 years ago to prompt them to describe something that made no sense until the 20th century? Does Mohenjo-Daro offer evidence of the unthinkable? And this is a question that scientists are asking themselves right now.